Right now, while every earthquake headline fixates on California, a fault beneath the Mississippi River is locked, loaded, and storing energy for not one earthquake, but a sequence of them. And 15 million people live directly above it. This is the new Madrid Seismic Zone, the geographic center of America, and it is not dormant. It is waiting. Memphis, St. Louis, Little Rock, Nashville, Evansville, Paducah. These cities sit atop a crack in Earth's crust that has been silent for 2 centuries. Silent, but not safe. When it ruptures, not if, when, the shaking will radiate from the Rockies to the Atlantic. Unreinforced brick buildings, the backbone of Midwestern downtowns, will collapse like cardboard. Bridges will buckle. Hospitals will fail. And yet, almost no one is talking about it. Why? To understand why this threat has been hiding in plain sight, we need to rewind the clock, because it has happened before and the evidence is still written into the landscape. This is an ancient history. In 2023, the Center for Earthquake Research and Information at the University of Memphis published updated findings on the new Madrid fault system, refining recurrence intervals and slip rates. The numbers are worse than expected. The USGS recently updated its National Seismic Hazard Model, the federal assessment shaping building codes, insurance rates, and disaster planning nationwide. The update reaffirmed what seismologists have been warning. The new Madrid Seismic Zone remains in the highest risk category for a catastrophic central U.S. earthquake event. Highest risk. While California receives billions in seismic funding and dominates every headline, the fault beneath Middle America, threatening 15 million people, sits mostly ignored. Scientists have now confirmed this is not a relic. It is an active, monitored threat. Before we go further, let me be clear about what this video is and what it isn't. Right now, I'm making you a promise. I'm not here to panic you or exaggerate. I'm not selling doomsday scenarios or fringe theories. Over the next 25 minutes, I'll walk you through the science, the history, real institutional risk assessments from USGS and FEMA, and yes, the genuine debate among scientists about when and if this fault will rupture again. I'll cite peer-reviewed studies. I'll present both sides. I'll show you where the uncertainty lives. This transparency is respect. Respect for your intelligence and the seriousness of living in a seismic zone. The title brought you here. The facts will keep you. And because this information needs to reach the people who live in the crosshairs, I need your help. If you live in the central U.S., I have a simple question for you right now. Have you ever felt a tremor? Do you know anyone who keeps an earthquake kit? Drop your city and your experience in the comments below. If you hit like and subscribe, YouTube's algorithm will push this video to more people in Memphis, St. Louis, the Boot Heel of Missouri, the folks who actually need to see it. Most people have no idea this fault even exists. You're clearly ahead of the curve just by watching this video today. So let's go back to the cold winter of 1811, when the middle of America truly shook itself completely apart. December 16th, 1811, 2:15 in the morning. Across the Missouri and Arkansas territories, settlers sleep in rough-hewn log cabins scattered along the Mississippi River. The nearest thing resembling civilization is New Madrid, a tiny trading post where flatboats dock to sell grain and pelts. Then the earth begins to roar, not shake, roar. A sound like thunder trapped underground, rolling up through bedrock and soil, growing louder, deeper, until it drowns out every other sound on earth. Eliza Bryan, a New Madrid resident, would later write, "The screaming of the affrighted inhabitants running to and fro, not knowing where to go or what to do, the cries of the fowls and beasts of every species, the cracking of trees falling. But first comes the motion. The ground doesn't just shake. It rolls in visible waves, like ocean swells made of dirt and stone. Trees, massive oaks and cypresses that have stood for centuries, snap like rifle shots. The sound echoes for miles. People are thrown from their beds, hurled against cabin walls. Outside, the air fills with sulfurous gas, venting from cracks splitting open in the earth. The smell of torn earth, of deep places never meant to see daylight, and then the impossible happens. The Mississippi River stops flowing. For a moment, the great river, the continent's central artery, simply stops. Then it begins flowing backward, upstream, as the riverbed buckles and heaves beneath it. Waterfalls form where none existed. Islands disappear, new ones emerge. Boatmen on the river that night described water rising in walls, their vessels tossed like toys, the channel itself reshaping in real time. This is magnitude 7.5, maybe higher. But here's what makes this different from any earthquake story you've heard. This was not the earthquake. This was the first earthquake. For months, the aftershocks continue, hundreds of them. Some large enough to collapse buildings, topple chimneys, crack foundations. Then, on January 23rd, 1812, a second massive main shock strikes, possibly even larger than the first. The terror begins all over again. 6 weeks later, February 7th, a third monster earthquake. Conservative estimates put it at magnitude 7.5. Some researchers suggest 8.0 or higher, Let that sit for a moment. 3 massive earthquakes in 3 months in the middle of North America. During that final quake, something extraordinary happens in northwest Tennessee. The ground simply drops away. 10 feet, 20 feet. The Mississippi River, still rearranging itself, pours into the depression. Overnight, Reelfoot Lake is born, 18,000 acres of new lake where dry land existed the day before. And across the earthquake zone, something else appears. Sand blows, circular patches where liquefaction, the soil literally turning to liquid, forces sand and water up through cracks, leaving permanent scars on the landscape. You can still see them today. 2 centuries later, the evidence is still there. No one knew if it would ever stop. Families loaded wagons and fled. Those who stayed lived in constant terror, sleeping outside their cabins, afraid the next shock would be the one that killed them. Then, gradually, the earth went quiet. For decades afterward, geologists couldn't explain what had happened. The report seemed impossible. There was no mountain range, no obvious plate boundary, no fault scarp cutting across the surface like California's San Andreas. The stable continental interior wasn't supposed to produce earthquakes, period. Certainly not earthquakes larger than most California quakes. For decades, even scientists didn't believe the reports. The magnitude estimates seemed impossible. How could the middle of a tectonic plate, the stable heart of North America, generate this kind of violence? The mystery deepened through the 19th and early 20th centuries. Geology textbooks relegated New Madrid to footnotes, a historical curiosity, an anomaly. Then, in the 1970s, the detective work began. USGS researchers started running deep seismic surveys across the Mississippi embayment. They were mapping what they couldn't see, faults buried under miles of river sediment. What they found changed everything. Deep beneath the Mississippi River Valley, the surveys revealed a massive geological structure, an ancient rift system, a failed ocean that tried, 500 million years ago, to split North America in half, the Reelfoot Rift. Picture this. Long before the Atlantic Ocean existed, long before the Appalachian Mountains, tectonic forces tried to tear the North American continent apart along a northeast-southwest line running through what is now Missouri, Arkansas, Tennessee, and Kentucky. The rift started forming. Magma welled up, the continent began to split, then the process stopped. The rift failed. But the scar remained, a permanent zone of weakness buried under sediment and time. The fault system is still there, still active, still accumulating stress. The 1811-12 sequence wasn't an anomaly. It was the most recent expression of a geological process that has been repeating for millennia. Paleoseismology, the study of ancient earthquakes preserved in the geological record, confirms it. By digging trenches and dating sand blows, researchers have identified multiple prehistoric earthquake sequences. Roughly every 5 to 8 centuries, the New Madrid system awakens. It happened 3 times in 3 months in 1811 and 12. It will happen again. The only questions are when and what will be in the way. So what is the New Madrid Seismic Zone, and why does it behave so differently from the faults we know in California? To understand why New Madrid is so dangerous, you need to understand the difference between 2 types of earthquakes. California sits on plate boundaries. The San Andreas Fault is where 2 massive pieces of Earth's crust, the Pacific and North American plates, grind past each other constantly. Think of it like 2 sheets of sandpaper rubbing together. The motion is ongoing, releasing energy in frequent smaller earthquakes and occasional big ones. This constant motion means California gets warning tremors. Small quakes happen regularly, reminding everyone that the fault is active, that stress is being released incrementally. New Madrid is completely different. New Madrid is an intraplate earthquake zone. It's an ancient crack inside the North American plate, buried under miles of Mississippi River sediment. Picture a hairline crack in a piece of glass. For centuries, stress builds invisibly with almost no warning tremors. No grinding, no regular releases. Then the crack fails all at once. This is why New Madrid is uniquely dangerous. It stays quiet for generations, lulling everyone into complacency. Then it erupts catastrophically. The 1811-12 sequence registered between magnitude 7.0 and 8.1. The USGS models support 7.5 to 7.7 for the largest shocks. Now, magnitude measures energy release, the raw power of the earthquake at its source, but intensity measures shaking and damage at the surface. And here's where New Madrid becomes truly terrifying. A magnitude 7.5 earthquake in California shakes hard within about 150 miles of the fault. Then the energy dissipates. A magnitude 7.5 earthquake in New Madrid shakes violently across 600 miles or more. 600 miles. The difference is the bedrock. California's crust is young, fractured, hot, full of faults and breaks that absorb and scatter seismic waves. The continental interior is ancient, cold, and rigid. Solid bedrock that conducts earthquake energy like a bell. When New Madrid ruptured in 1811-12, church bells rang in Boston, 700 miles away. Walls cracked in Washington, D.C. The shaking was felt from Canada to the Gulf Coast, from the Rockies to the Atlantic. Let me put the energy release in perspective. A magnitude 7.7 earthquake releases energy equivalent to hundreds of Hiroshima bombs, thousands of tons of TNT detonating simultaneously. And all of that energy radiates across the eastern two-thirds of the United States through solid, conducting bedrock. But the shaking is only part of the threat. The entire Mississippi River Valley sits on waterlogged sediment, ancient river mud deposited over millions of years. When the sediment shakes violently, it liquefies, literally turns to quicksand. Buildings sink, roads disappear, pipelines snap. Anything heavy simply sinks into what was solid ground moments before. Those sand blows from 18, 11, 12, that was liquefaction in action. Pressurized sand and water shooting up through cracks like geysers, leaving permanent scars we can still see today. So, when does it happen again? Paleoseismology, studying ancient earthquakes preserved in the geological record, suggests major New Madrid events occur roughly every 500 to 1,000 years. The last major sequence was 1811-12. Simple math, we're 210 years in. Not overdue. Earthquakes don't follow a schedule, but within the window, well within the window. Scientists dig trenches across old sand blows, date the sediment layers, and piece together the earthquake history. The pattern is clear. New Madrid doesn't stay quiet forever. The recurrence interval debate continues among researchers. Some argue for shorter intervals, 4 to 6 centuries. Others suggest longer, 7 to 10 centuries. But here's what every study agrees on. The fault system is still active, still accumulating stress, and still capable of producing the same massive earthquake sequences that devastated the region 2 centuries ago. The science is clear. The timing is uncertain. Back in 1811, fewer than 1,000 people lived in the shaking zone. Today, the same fault sits beneath one of the most densely populated and industrially critical corridors in America. In 1811, when the New Madrid fault last awakened, fewer than 1,000 people lived within the zone of catastrophic shaking. Today, 15 million people call this region home. The contrast is staggering. Where scattered log cabins once dotted the frontier, major metropolitan areas now sprawl across the fault system. Where dirt trails connected trading posts, interstate highways carry millions of vehicles daily. Where the Mississippi ran wild and free, a managed shipping channel moves 60% of America's grain exports. And almost none of it was built with earthquakes in mind. Memphis, Tennessee, population 650,000, metro area 1.3 million, sits directly atop the New Madrid fault system. Let me repeat that. Memphis sits directly on top of the fault. FEMA's worst-case scenario for a repeat magnitude 7.7 event projects thousands of deaths and tens of thousands of injuries in Memphis alone. The agency's models show total collapse of unreinforced brick buildings, the backbone of Memphis's historic downtown core. Major hospitals would be non-functional. Fire stations would collapse. The very infrastructure needed for emergency response would be destroyed in the opening seconds. 150 miles north, St. Louis faces a different but equally dire threat. The city proper houses 300,000 people. The metro area, 2.8 million. Much of St. Louis is built on fill and river sediment, prime liquefaction territory. The bridges that connect Missouri and Illinois across the Mississippi, including the critical Interstate 55 and Interstate 70 crossings, were built before modern seismic codes existed. These bridges carry hundreds of thousands of commuters daily and serve as vital freight corridors. When the next New Madrid sequence strikes, these bridges may not survive. Paducah, Kentucky, Little Rock, Arkansas, Evansville, Indiana, Cape Girardeau, and Sikeston, Missouri, all sit within the high-intensity shaking zone. All feature aging infrastructure designed without seismic considerations. Even Nashville, Tennessee, and Louisville, Kentucky, farther from the epicenter, would experience damaging shaking levels that their unreinforced masonry buildings cannot withstand. The USGS National Seismic Hazard Model gives us the probabilities: 25 to 40% chance of a magnitude 6.0 or larger earthquake in the next 50 years, 7 to 10% chance of a magnitude 7.5 repeat event in the same time frame. 10% may sound manageable until you consider what's at stake. Nearly every highway bridge spanning the Mississippi River within the New Madrid zone was built before engineers understood intraplate earthquake threats. Natural gas pipelines crisscrossing the region were designed for tornadoes and floods, not violent ground shaking. Electrical grids powering millions of homes assume the ground stays put. Water mains serving major cities weren't designed for liquefaction. In Memphis and St. Louis, hospitals, schools, and fire stations, the critical facilities needed most during disasters, are housed largely in unreinforced masonry buildings that will pancake when the shaking starts. But perhaps most catastrophically, the Mississippi River itself is at risk. The levee system protecting millions of acres of farmland and hundreds of riverside communities was engineered for floods, not earthquakes. Levee failures during strong shaking could inundate vast areas. River navigation could be completely blocked by collapsed bridges, shifted channels, or Reelfoot-style subsidence. The economic implications are staggering. 60% of U.S. grain exports move down this river. FEMA and USGS studies estimate direct economic losses in the hundreds of billions of dollars. Indirect losses from supply chain disruption, population displacement, and reconstruction could exceed $500 billion. $500 billion. That rivals or exceeds the projected losses from a major California earthquake. But California is prepared. The central United States is not. If you live in Memphis right now, look around. Most of the buildings you see were built assuming earthquakes simply don't happen here. If you live in St. Louis, check the build date on your home. If it's brick, built before 1980 and never retrofitted, it is not rated for this kind of shaking. If you commute across any Mississippi River bridge between Missouri and Tennessee, you're traveling on infrastructure that predates our understanding of New Madrid's threat. The fault hasn't forgotten how to make earthquakes. We've just forgotten how to live on top of one. Now, before this sounds like disaster porn, let me pump the brakes and give you the other side. Because there is real scientific debate here and you deserve to hear it. Here's what I promised you at the beginning, the full truth, including the parts that complicate the story. There is genuine scientific debate about New Madrid's future, and you need to hear both sides. Some seismologists argue the New Madrid zone may actually be decreasing in activity. They point to recent GPS studies showing very slow, almost negligible, strain accumulation compared to California's active faults. Dr. Seth Stein at Northwestern University has published research suggesting the 1811-12 sequence may have been an anomaly. His team argues the fault system could be slowly shutting down as North America's stress regime evolves. Some of their models suggest the next major event could be 500 years away or more. The paleoseismic data supporting regular recurrence intervals. Critics say the sample size is too small to be reliable. We're extrapolating from limited sand blow evidence and making assumptions about earthquake clustering that may not hold. These are serious scientists at respected institutions raising legitimate questions. But other researchers push back hard. USGS and SERI teams point to ongoing microseismicity throughout the zone. Hundreds of tiny earthquakes are recorded every year. Proof the fault system remains active. Modern instruments detect microquakes that 1800 settlers never felt. New sand blows and liquefaction features continue appearing in sediment cores. Paleoseismologists using refined dating techniques have identified multiple prehistoric earthquake sequences, supporting the clustering model. And here's the counterintuitive part. Even slow strain accumulation in a locked intraplate fault makes catastrophic release more likely, not less. Unlike California's faults, which release energy incrementally, New Madrid accumulates stress for centuries without significant release. The long silence isn't reassuring. It's more dangerous. But let me debunk the worst headline you see about New Madrid. The big one is overdue. That's not how earthquake probability works. A 500-year average recurrence interval doesn't mean a clock starts ticking every 500 years. It means roughly a 1 in 500 annual chance, which compounds over decades. The USGS doesn't say New Madrid is overdue. They say there's a measurable, significant probability within our lifetimes. Here's my honesty pledge. No one can predict the date. Anyone who tells you 2025 or 2030 is lying to you. The science gives us probability ranges, not certainty. What we do know beyond reasonable doubt, the fault system exists. It remains active according to multiple lines of evidence. It has produced catastrophic earthquake sequences in recorded history, and the region sitting atop it is almost entirely unprepared. The scientific debate focuses on timing and probability. 10% chance in 50 years versus 5%, 500-year recurrence versus 800-year. But arguing over these percentages misses the fundamental point. Either number is unacceptably high for a region with essentially zero earthquake readiness. If your doctor told you there's a 5 to 10% chance you'll have a major heart attack in the next 50 years, you wouldn't debate the precise percentage. You'd change your diet, start exercising, and take preventive action. The New Madrid debate isn't really about earthquake science. It's about risk management and societal preparedness. And that's the key lesson here. Because there is a place that faced a similar hidden threat and made a choice. The contrast is stunning. Japan sits atop multiple subduction zones and intraplate faults. It experiences more significant earthquakes than almost any nation on Earth. And routinely, Japan absorbs magnitude 6.0 earthquakes with 0 deaths. 0. How? Because Japan made a choice decades ago. They accepted a hard truth. You cannot prevent earthquakes, but you can absolutely prevent deaths. Japanese building codes are among the strictest in the world. Older structures are systematically retrofitted. Schools, hospitals, and government buildings are engineered to survive violent shaking. Earthquake drills are mandatory. In schools, in workplaces, in public spaces, Japanese children practice drop, cover, hold on, the way American children practice fire drills. Their early warning system detects the first seismic waves and broadcasts alerts to phones and televisions seconds before shaking arrives. Trains automatically brake, gas lines automatically shut off. Public earthquake kits are commonplace. Preparedness is woven into the culture itself. Now compare that to the central United States. Tennessee, Missouri, Arkansas, and Kentucky have minimal seismic building code enforcement, particularly outside Memphis, where some standards exist, but retrofit requirements remain weak. Most schools throughout the new Madrid zone conduct tornado drills. Almost none conduct earthquake drills. Public awareness sits near zero. Ask someone in Little Rock or Evansville about earthquake risk, and most will tell you the same thing. Earthquakes are a California problem. The West Coast has Shake Alert, a functioning early warning system that gives residents precious seconds of notice. The central United States has nothing comparable. No warning system, no alerts, no seconds. And here's the cruelest detail. Hospitals, fire stations, and police stations throughout the region are often housed in the most vulnerable old masonry buildings. The very facilities you depend on afterward are the ones most likely to collapse. If you've ever worried about this and felt paranoid, you're not paranoid. You're informed, and you're living in a region that has been genuinely underserved by decades of policy attention. So let me land the thesis of this entire video. The intensity of an earthquake is set by nature. Geology decides the magnitude. The fault decides the shaking. But the death toll? The death toll is set by choices made beforehand. The buildings we retrofit, the kits we pack, the bridges we reinforce, the drills we run. Japan takes magnitude 6.0 earthquakes and walks away. New Madrid, with the same magnitude, could kill thousands. The difference isn't the fault, it's us. Which brings us to the question you've been waiting for. What can you do? Here's what you control. You can't move the fault. You can't change when it ruptures. But you absolutely can control whether your family is ready when it does. Start with an earthquake kit. 1 gallon of water per person per day for 3 days minimum. Non-perishable food for the same duration. Flashlight with extra batteries or a hand crank model. Battery-powered or crank radio. When the power's out, radio may be your only information source. First aid supplies. Whistle for signaling rescuers. Dust masks. Crucial for breathing after building collapses. Cash and small bills. Copies of important documents in waterproof bags. Store everything in a grab-and-go container. When your house is damaged and you need to evacuate, you won't have time to gather supplies. Secure your home. Anchor heavy furniture, water heaters, tall bookshelves, anything that could topple and trap you. Know your home's build date and construction materials. If you live in pre-1980 unreinforced brick and can afford it, consult a structural engineer about retrofitting. Yes, it's expensive. Start with foundation bolting and chimney bracing, the most cost-effective safety improvements. Identify safe spots in every room, under sturdy desks or tables, away from windows and heavy objects. Interior doorways aren't as safe as once believed. Get under something solid instead. Practice drop, cover, hold on. You know tornado safety by heart. Same intensity for earthquake prep. Drop to your knees, take cover under furniture. Hold on and protect your head. Create a communication plan. Choose an out-of-state contact person. Local phone lines may be jammed, but long distance sometimes works. Establish a family meeting point in case you're separated. Know your workplace and your children's school earthquake protocols. If they don't have any, advocate for them. Demand earthquake drills alongside tornado drills. Consider earthquake insurance. Your standard homeowners or renters policy doesn't cover earthquake damage. Coverage is available through state programs or policy riders. It's expensive, especially in high-risk zones, but if you're in Memphis or St. Louis, it may be worth evaluating. Get involved locally, attend city council meetings, ask about seismic retrofits for critical infrastructure, support bond measures that include earthquake upgrades for bridges, hospitals, water systems, schools. The difference between a disaster and a survivable event often comes down to decisions made years beforehand. You can't control the fault. You can control whether your family has water, a plan, and a meeting point. You can control whether your city takes this seriously. So let me leave you with this. The new Madrid fault has been completely silent for 2 centuries. But silence is not safety. It's a debt accumulating in the dark. The earthquake will be an act of pure nature. The death toll will be an act of choice. The buildings we left unreinforced, the drills we never ran, the emergency kits we never packed, the conversations we never had. We can't predict the exact day, but we can decide right now whether we'll be ready. The fault beneath the Mississippi doesn't care about our politics, our busy schedules, or our comfortable assumptions. It operates on geological time, building stress grain by grain, year by year, until the moment it decides enough is enough. When that moment arrives, Not if, when. The only things that will matter are the choices we made beforehand, the preparation we completed or neglected, the conversations we had or avoided having. Tell me in the comments right now, do you live in the central United States? Did you know about New Madrid before watching this video? What's one concrete step you're going to take this week? If this video taught you something, or if you know someone in Memphis, St. Louis, Paducah, Nashville, hit like and share it. Subscribe so you're here for the next one. The algorithm will push this to more people in the shaking zone, and that genuinely matters. 15 million people live above a fault that has triggered catastrophic earthquake sequences before. Most of them have absolutely no idea this threat even exists. Now you do. You know the real truth. What you do with that critical information, right here, right now, is completely up to you.